Imagine this. You're in college, staring at your entire life savings, $2,016, and you decide to hand it over to a kid from your dorm because he has 10 million Twitter followers. No business plan, no guarantees, just a chance to learn how to make money online.
I'm not sure you'll believe me, but I gave my entire life savings to a random kid in my dorm. It turned into a 750,000 follower business. No plan, just risk and hustle. So I ended up living in a tent for 2 years and drove 60,000 miles in a branded camper van. Because if you're not obsessed with your business, why should anyone else be? We built PodPitch with $3,300 and no code. Now we're doing over 6 figures a month. You don't need to be technical, you just need to hit go.
This is Ryan Atkinson, and you're listening to the Outfit Podcast, where we uncover the secrets of building and running successful businesses. I am so excited for today's episode because most people would call that reckless. But for Parker Olson, it was just the beginning. That gamble turned into a Twitter account with 750,000 plus followers, a profitable blog, and the first chapter in a wild entrepreneurial ride. From living in a tent for 2 years to driving 60,000 miles selling snacks, now running PodPitch, a company using AI to help people land on podcasts like this one. Today, Parker's company is doing over 6 figures a month, and he built the first version with no code and no technical background. His story is about experimentation and the massive opportunities hiding in unexpected places. Parker, I am so excited to welcome you on here today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for having me, man. It's nice to meet you, and I'm really excited to chat. So appreciate you letting me come on the show.
It's going to be so good. And I want to call back to that intro here and talking about your founder story. You gave your entire life savings to someone in your dorm to learn about like Twitter. Let's talk about that. Bring us back to that time frame of what your mindset was when that time was.
Yeah, definitely, not an advisable decision. Granted, 2016 bucks, not that much money, but to me, it was all the money to my name at the time. I'd always been interested in entrepreneurial pursuits, and I'll just never forget the day I met this kid. Nick Neve is his name, and he's on his phone, and he was the first kid I met at college, and I'm just curious. I'm like, what are you doing on your phone? And he was wearing this just like bougie watch, but clearly a blue collar kid. And we became friends, and he finally showed me he was running these Twitter accounts. And basically he was going on and sharing retweets with other Twitter accounts, putting up content, driving traffic to blogs, and then collecting money primarily from advertising from his own blogs.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, this is awesome. I'm in. And he was kind of like, yeah, all right, man. And I'm like, no, like, I'm serious. Like, I want to do this. I want to learn about this. And, he's like, okay, yeah. And so I was like, F it. Like, I'll give you all of my savings. I like put all the chips in, and just like all the chips are in. Like, I'm clearly serious about this. Like, I want to learn. I want to do what you're doing. I love the idea of making money from your phone. Like, that sounds lovely to me.
Amazing. I want to ask, you love the idea of that, but like, what do you do next? Like, what was the Twitter account like you started, and how did you grow to 150,000 followers? You're in college while you're doing this. You literally bet the house on this and it works. Talk to us about the Twitter account building to 750,000 followers.
So the name of the Twitter account, it does not exist anymore, unfortunately. I think you can find it on Google, but it was called Shit Your Parents Say. And it took me a while to come up with it. And I knew that, he basically said, okay, if you give me all your money, I'll show you exactly how I make money, what I do. And then I'll help you grow a Twitter account and think about how do you grow a Twitter account. But you're going to need a good account. And so when I came to him with that idea, we both agreed it was a really solid idea for 2 reasons. Number one, the TAM, right? Everybody has parents. So it's sort of like highly relatable. The second component of this, which I didn't realize at the time, but he told me about, was probably the primary audience is going to be these maybe high school kids who are going to think it's funny. It's sort of this adolescent humor. And because of that, we could run blogs that target high school kids. And some of the highest paying keywords at the time were keywords revolving around colleges. So when you went into Google Ads and you searched highest paying keywords for Google Ads, there were a bunch of insurance keywords. And then when you get out of the insurance realm, kind of the next big ones were college-based keywords. So we really liked that angle.
I want to ask as well here. So you grew this to 750,000 followers. How long did it take you to grow that? How did you grow it? And talk to us about introducing the blog as well, because that was another way for you to have profitability while doing this as well.
Correct. It was really the only way I was making money. So how the system works is you are just building an audience on Twitter. You can still do this anywhere today. Build an audience, and then you're funneling that audience somewhere where you're monetizing them. And in this instance, the monetization value proposition here was through advertisers. So we would make a blog, and it basically was a listicle blog. It was like top 10 party schools in the South, best religious colleges, like, I don't know. And the idea is obviously, yeah, if you build a bigger Twitter account, you can funnel more traffic and you can make more money. Now, how do you build a Twitter account? Great question. And
Yeah.
it's not something I would have really probably been able to do on my own off the start. So you asked me how long it took. And to get to the first 100,000 followers, it took about 6 months. That was the most painful part of the process. And how I got there was I would put out some content and we would see what content organically was doing well. And then him with his 10 million followers, he would retweet some of my best tweets to basically cross expose. It's still, from what I understand, the number one way a podcast grows is you have the host go on these other shows and you swap hosts, and then you're sort of exposing podcasts to different audiences. So he helped me really get to 100,000. Once you're at 100,000, it sort of opens up the door to start trading retweets with other accounts that are really between like 100 and 500,000. And the entire sort of business, the entire system was put up a new blog post once a week, be tweeting, at least 2 to 3 times daily, and then literally as much as you can during the day, trade retweets. So I'm DMing another account and I'm saying like RT question mark. They might respond and say, why? And then they'd send whatever post they primarily want me to retweet. And then another post that's really just an advertisement running traffic to their blog.
Gosh, that's so interesting. We could talk so much more about like the Twitter system in place, but I do want to get to PodPitch where you're now doing 6 figures a month here. Before we do that, you have an important part to your story, which is forage. Specifically, talk to us about from living in a tent to driving across the country in like a branded brand. That's what I'm more curious about, but I do want to hear your story as well.
Yeah. Everybody loves that. The forage chapter for me was all about just like grit. Like in my mind, I was like, okay, yeah, like you make a startup successful by just being like so perseverant and willing to do anything. That was sort of the mentality, like all in mentality. You hear about this all the time. That did fail, by the way, and we'll get to that.
We'll talk about it.
So yeah, early on, COVID hits and I'm still working my job, and I had just gotten off of doing 18 months of dieting, just trying different diets. And I fell in love with whole food eating and functional mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms sold at Whole Foods, and felt compelled like, whoa, these make me feel really good. I want to help introduce these to people. Other people will see how good these make them feel them. So I start making, granola in my kitchen, and then I'm just storing it in my room, and my room gets crazy. And so I say, F it. Like, I'm going to move into my backyard and throw out my bed to make an office. Like, it was sort of like for myself to be like, I'm going in on this. And so every single day when I woke up in that tent, I knew like what I was focused on. And so that was sort of the ethos of moving into the tent. And then I actually loved living in the tent and stayed in the tent for about 2 years while I kind of like developed the brand and sort of just bootstrapped, raised some money, like kind of grew the core. And then to the van component, right? We ended up getting a really good opportunity to basically sell our product through this massive distribution network called KeHE. So healthy foods really are primarily distributed around the US through 2 primary distributors, UNFI and KeHE. KeHE reached out to us. They saw an Instagram ad and they were like, hey, we think your product could be really awesome. We'll open up these distribution centers for you and let you sell into all these stores in our distribution centers. And I said, awesome. But COVID was kind of waning. It was really hard to email people, get in touch with people. Like, people were busy. And I thought, okay, well, no one's going in person anymore. That's a great opportunity to go back to in person. And, I was like, cool. All right, I'm getting rid of the tent. And we bought like a 1995 vintage Japanese pop-up camper van. I still own it. I love that van.
That's so sick.
So like the driving wheels on the right side, and we got it branded, wrapped in the brand, and I hit the road to literally go to like grocery store headquarters in the regions we could sell in and get a meeting and show them our product and sell our product into the stores. Like, to me, it was as simple as that on some levels.
Yeah, Parker, what that reminds me of is the Shoe Dog story of Phil Knight when he started selling Nikes. Is he was literally going to like track events with a bunch of Nike shoes in like his trunk, opening it and saying like, hey, test it out. It sounds like it's a super similar story with your story of like grit and like going around the nation just saying, hey, at my van, you want to book a meeting with me essentially.
I loved the whiteboard. I would post on LinkedIn a place like me in the van, and I would at somebody's name and I'd be like, I'm 867 miles away from your headquarters. I'll be there in 2 days. Like, can I have a meeting? And then I'd tag them. And a bunch of people on LinkedIn, right, would sort of like weigh in. People loved it. And yeah, I ended up booking, quite a few meetings with some pretty senior people at like pretty legitimate retail chains around the nation.
Oh, dude, that's so, so cool. So I want to continue talking about 4H here. I mean, we are going to talk about pitch and getting to, six figures a month. Listeners, I promise we're going to get there. Talks about like the journey though. Like, how long did you do it? Was it a success? I mean, did you have that successful exit that everyone dreams of? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, I mean, I worked on it for 3.5 years. I never took a dollar from that company. Didn't take any pay.
Wow.
And it was such a good lesson for me. At that time in my life, I was like, you have to be all in. You can take no pay. You just persevere. Like, you figure it out. And at some point, you get across the line. And the reality is, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, if your business is not profitable and you can't raise dollars and you can't pay yourself, like, there isn't just some angel that's going to be like, wow, you've worked super hard. Here's
Yeah.
this lovely exit. And so for me, like, the really big learnings there were, number one, what we were selling was a vitamin, not a pain pill. So it didn't solve a problem, right? It was sort of this like, I had to explain to somebody why it was a good thing to buy, and it was expensive. And part of that lesson is it's really hard to part with people from their money. Doesn't matter how much money, it's actually more, in my opinion, the act of somebody giving you money is really hard. And I learned that. I'm so grateful for that lesson. That was sort of like number one lesson takeaway for me. And then the second takeaway for me as well is like, you can have as much grit, perseverance, whatever, but if the financial model does not make sense, the business does not make sense. Like, hands down. Hands down.
From what you know now, obviously no angel is going to go save you. You know what you know now. Is there anything you would do differently though to like maybe make it successful? I'd love to hear just that reflection.
Yeah,
Point.
totally. I think at the time, we were trying to raise money and that's what everybody was doing. It was like, raise money because that's how you grow. I would have stayed as small as possible to really validate like the business model and how it could scale profitably and actually be a real business before just trying to sort of grow just to grow, right? Like we were growing, but in an inefficient way and not building a model that could have ever sustained itself.
That's been a really big shift in the past 5 years, that like 2020, 21 timeframe, throwing money at investors, grow as fast as you can. You saw some companies like fast.com had like $100,000 in revenue with like 100 employees or something. Like, it was like insane. Like, it's growing profitably now. And speaking of profitability, we lead to PodPitch here. So let's talk about PodPitch. First, before we dive into building the first version for yourself with using no-code tools, what is PodPitch?
So PodPitch is basically an automated media outreach tool. So primarily right now, PodPitch is focused on helping people research and identify the most relevant podcasts for them to go be a guest on, to help become a thought leader, get in front of the right audiences, or share their story, right? And so it's an AI tool, and it's built on top of one of the largest podcast databases in the world. So AI can go through that whole database, identify what podcasts you'd best be a guest on, and help you do outreach to them to get you to become a guest on the show.
Yeah, and we're using it at Upflip, and I personally love it. It is like, it honestly saves us a ton of time, gets that cross promotion strategy as you talked about here. So I endorse it from the Upflip side, but I want to talk about the founding story of it, because as much as the listeners love to hear that Upflip's using PodPitch, they want to know the PodPitch founding story here. So no code tools, you build this yourself. What led up to PodPitch, and how did you start developing this?
Yeah. So the iOS update hits. If anybody remembers that in 2021, basically it became really expensive to acquire customers online. And my story being in the van, blah, 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 I got invited on some pretty cool podcasts. And those podcasts ended up leading to really awesome work opportunities for me personally and for Forage. And so I sort of leaned into the strategy and was like, oh, maybe podcast guesting is interesting. And then I quickly found out there's so many podcasts. It's so hard to get in touch with people.
Yep.
It's so painful and time consuming. And around the same time, I was learning this awesome like code-free tool. It was a data collection tool called Bardeen. It's still around. I still love Bardeen. I'm waiting for them to like make me an ambassador.
Yeah.
And And yeah, I basically learned how to build data sets, build first party data sets. And I built these first party data sets of like entrepreneurship podcasts or food podcasts, and then was sort of doing more automated outreach to them. And that was like the very first step of building this concept for myself.
Interesting. So you're doing this like yourself and just saying like, okay, like I'm going to fiddle around like entrepreneurship podcasts, automated outreach. Great, great, great. This is all going well. But when did you like that light bulb moment? You're like, holy smokes, I have a business here.
Yeah, yeah. So my current co-founder, he was a founder of other consumer packaged goods brands, and we just became friends. And we both, I feel like, sort of admitted to each other of being like, we don't think either of our businesses are really going to go anywhere. We're kind of like, it's time to almost like cut off and move on, and we want to work together. And so we started looking at different ideas, and I showed him this tool that I built, and a few other founder friends were really interested in me helping set up the same system for them. And so we were like, maybe there's something really interesting here. And so we started to try and sell it basically. And we sold our first 10K of MRR off of this like code free, like janky, like I was like coding. I'm so non-technical. It's like
Yeah.
painful how non-technical I am. This like janky, like,
Yeah.
oh my God. I wish I could show just like screenshots of my screen of like trying to like pull data and manipulate data. And it was so bad, but people were paying us. And so that's what was important. And we sort of just followed that thread.
So I want to ask as well. So you're doing about 10K in MRR a month, which is obviously you're listening, your ears should be perking up because that's $10,000 a month in reoccurring revenue, which is a huge deal. Who is like your first customers and how did you price this? Was it those founder friends that were like, hey, this looks awesome, I'll actually pay you for this? Or how did you guys get your first customers? I want to get tactical advice here.
Great question. So it was founder friends, and pricing discovery is really challenging. We still have challenges in terms of pricing discovery. We have customers that look at our pricing model and are like, I would pay 10x for this. And then there's people who are like, I would never pay that. And you're like,
Yep.
damn, who's right and why and when? And so, yeah, it was discovery. We would say, hey, we'll pay this. We think if you were to go and hire somebody to do this, this is what it would cost. And our product is discounted on that effectively. So yeah, at first it really was kind of these like founder friends in network, but we did hit a wall. So like we got up to 10K, kind of hit a wall, saw churn, kind of like saw like a slight dribble, and we're like, okay, this might not work. And around the same time, somebody who I showed the tool to said, hey, I think this tool could be really helpful for PR agencies. And we said, awesome, great. And I started just getting calls with PR agencies. I was just railing people on LinkedIn and everywhere being like, hey, I think I'm building something really cool. Will you give me 20 minutes and just tell me if you think it's cool or not? And it was relentless. And people would come on these calls and they'd be like, wow, this could be really cool. I wish it did this, or could it do that? And I'm like, yes. And then we sort of had an engineer starting to work on some things, but the money was still not coming in. And this is where I come back to the learning at Forage and my current, like, latest, biggest takeaway, where it's so hard to get people to part with their money. And we started making money after we started asking one very simple question on these calls. So I would share the product. They would say, wow, that's so cool. And I would say, okay, what would make you pay for this right now on this call? And sometimes I would preface it because it can be an awkward question. And I would say, hey, do you mind if I ask you an awkward question? And then everybody says, yes, of course. And then when you ask it, it's not as awkward.
It's so good.
I still love that question today. Whenever there's a hard conversation, you always lead with it. And I would ask people that, and, then they start telling you the real stuff. Everybody wants to be supportive, but as soon as it comes down to even them giving you $1, that's where you'll really know if you're onto something or not. And that's advice I share all the time now. Like, if you want to build something, ask somebody to pay you on the spot. And if they pay you on the spot, you'll know you're onto something. And if they don't, you're not quite there.
Yeah. Well, what I love about that, like sales technique is like what we can call it here is like, it really gets down to like, why are we not going to do this? And that undercovering like their problem points of like, well, like I have to talk to X, Y, and Z, like, oh, well, we have another supplier right now. That's when you like can really address those issues. I'm sure that's a tactic, like why you use it so you can address those real hard issues.
And yeah, and for us, it was like what we found before we were asking that question, we were going down one path because everybody was like, this is what you should build. This is great. This is great. As soon as we started asking that question, we went a different path, and very quickly, like somebody paid on a call, and that person that paid that concept that we sold them is now what we've scaled.
Oh, dude, that is so, so cool. And I'll talk about investment as well, because from Forage, like, you took on investment money. That changes who you report to. That changes expectations. That changes goals. How did you decide to lean on like a more bootstrapped way at the beginning? I'd love to hear that.
So we upfront when my co-founder and I got together, we sat down and we were like, okay, we've attempted to run businesses. We know that it's not fun and games. We know that you better be really careful what you get yourself into because everybody's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to start a company. I want to be financially independent, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes you think you want that, you get into that, and then you're stuck and it's shitty. And so we decided, we were like, okay, we don't want to sell something where people are going to pay us under at least several $100s a month. We do not want to raise money. And we want our sales cycle, i.e., somebody to be able to say yes and pay us to be under a week, which I really loved. My co-founder really pushed on that, and I'm so glad he did because I was listening to these people who were giving us good feedback, and I'm like, it's a normal sales cycle, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, like I really agree, and I'm so glad for my co-founder, Neil, for that advice.
Yeah, I want to ask, now that you have done investments with like raising money and also being bootstrapped, tell us who getting angel investment is for and tell us who it's not for and tell us basically who bootstrapping is for.
Great question. Yeah, I think, there's probably no line in the sand, but after experiencing what I've experienced, like there are certain industries where bootstrapping is maybe possible, but it just extends how long it will take significantly. For us, like me and my co-founder lived without a salary or paying us ourselves for 6 months. And I lived in New York City and was just cutting into savings. So it was inherently risky. And so, it can be helpful. It probably would have been helpful. We probably would have been more comfortable if we had brought on the right investor. I just think we both early on, and especially in the consumer products good space, that space just requires so much money to get to a scale where you can become profitable. I chatted with a founder friend the other day. He's doing 150 million. Last year, he did 80 million.
Wow.
And this year will be his first year that he's profitable. Yeah. Let that sink in, Ryan.
I'm intentionally not saying anything because I want everyone to just listen to what you just said there.
Let that sink in. When I talked to him and I was like, yeah, we're doing this much. We've basically been profitable since like day one. And he was like, you were more profitable than I was last year doing $80 million.
And I want to hit on your point as well that you said earlier, like when you get into entrepreneurship, like know what you're signing up for here. I had a friend the other day, he's like trying to launch a drink brand, like some sort of drink. I don't know exactly what it is, but I texted him, I was like, hey man, like I saw you're launching this. Like, it's like super cool. Like, let me know if I can ever do anything for you. Like I'm an entrepreneur. I get how hard it is. And he's like, will do. And he's like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'd love to hear from like Mr. CEO. And like, obviously he's like kidding and stuff, but I was like, trust me, you'll learn that is the biggest blessing, but that is also the biggest curse in your life if you are not careful of having a CEO entrepreneurship title.
Yeah, no, I said for a long time, I never want to be a CEO. Being a CEO sucks. Like, do not idolize. And also, going into entrepreneurship, it's so easy to get wrapped up in like the romance and the lore and like founder mode and like, oh, so cool. Like, you better also be really just diligent in just being unbiased about the business and the state of the business, because it's so easy to lie to yourself and be like, well, if I raise this extra dollar or I go into this extra dollar of debt, it should work. Like I've seen and I know many founders who have gone into a ton of personal debt and like not ruin their entire lives, but probably set themselves back financially and personally and like traumatize themselves maybe for a decade.
Yeah, you got to be careful like what you're getting yourself into. And of course, it takes reps. Like we don't want to scare people that are listening here. Like it just takes reps to like really understand like what you want to do and you'll get good at it for sure. I mean, you're obviously good at this now because obviously you're profitable. You're hitting 6 figures a month in revenue, which is amazing. I want to talk to you. What channels or strategies are driving your growth right now?
I think for us, our product that's on the market has never existed before, and it solves such a painful motion. It solves such a serious pain point for our core customer where, if we can get a customer on a demo call, on average, 1 in 3 of those people becomes a customer within 7 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're onto something when you start seeing numbers like that, because this is just a widespread pain point. Now, in terms of channels that are working, like every single customer we have, and that's actually with a slight caveat, which I'll get to, has come from a demo, like a live demo. So we tested kind of the channel of like product-led growth. And for listeners who aren't familiar with that, it really would mean like a free trial or basically a way for a customer to try the tool or pay for the tool without ever meeting with an individual. Tech companies love that because it's highly scalable. But we tried that and we got hordes of people who signed up for a free trial and our conversion rate was like 3%. And so you look at, okay, your conversion rate's 3% from a free trial versus 33% from sales call. And to get back to the channel conversation, in terms of channels that like have worked super well for us, honestly, like primarily advertising, because of what we're promising, it hits on such a specific need point where we can go and advertise and advertising in the right newsletters, on the right podcasts, really hitting the target audience because that pain is so real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How did you identify that pain point that you guys are like really hitting on? Talk to us about like developing like your unique value proposition, and I want to let listeners know how they can do the same for their companies.
So I'll come back to, again, the mental model I love about this is vitamin versus pain pill. Like, are you building something that like is just supportive, could be helpful? Like, I would be hesitant to really spend so much time. You really want to solve something where every single day that person's like, F this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And when people don't want to do something, they'll pay for it. And you'll know if they'll pay for it because you ask them to pay on the call. Like, and so for us, we really figured out our value proposition once we started talking to people and saying, will you pay for this right now? And we discovered PR people were saying yes immediately. And that was like, okay, if someone's willing to pay for this on the call right now and the product is janky, the product was not pretty. We've never had pretty branding. Nothing's ever been really pretty, but it functionally gets a very specific job done. That is how you will know you are onto product market fit.
That is so, so good. Another thing that like really I like that you said there, you got really gritty with your numbers there. You knew a 3% booking rate if they're on a free trial compared to a 33% if you got on a sales call. Talks about the value of actually knowing these metrics and why it's so important for entrepreneurs from day zero to like know your metrics to a heart like that so you can make informed decisions.
Yeah. So, there's all sorts of metrics. You can track any metric, right?
And you can track anything.
Anything. Metrics like that for us, like continue to indicate that, hey, we are building something that's really valuable. When you have those types of numbers on conversions, that tells us, hey, we're building something that's really healthy in the ecosystem. We're clearly addressing customer needs. We're addressing functionality. At the same time, like knowing your numbers allows you to understand like, okay, if we ran this process forever, or we 10x this process, like, are we still profitable? Like, what is our customer acquisition cost? Can we continue to bootstrap? Or sometimes the KPIs lend themselves to say, maybe your conversion rate on a meeting is 0.0001%, but your lifetime value of a customer is $1 billion. Well, okay, now you just need to meet with 1 million people and raise the money to meet with 1 million people. I think it just helps, make informed decisions financially about, do you need investment or not? Where should you spend? Where should you not spend? And so forth.
Yeah, and I know you're spending a lot on advertising, as you have said, newsletters, coming on podcasts, like with your target audience. I'd love to hear like how advertising has worked for you. Obviously, you guys are doing these strategies, which I think are honestly like going on podcasts and newsletter are a little bit more like forward thinking. I feel like people are still behind the ball on that. How did you guys identify that as like being a great channel for you?
Yeah, experimentation.
Yeah, all marketing is.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love to hear you say that. One of the biggest pitfalls I found as an early entrepreneur and as a first time entrepreneur, and something I didn't understand, and I wish somebody had just hit me in the face and been like, you need to understand this, is there are an unlimited number of marketing channels that every single one will promise you will 10x your customers and ROAS and high. Everybody promises that. And the reality is, depending on the business, depending on the market, depending on the industry, things may work, things may not work. And you need to really be diligent about running experiments and tracking experiments and determining the effectiveness of experiment. So for us, we found these channels through experimentation. We would say, hey, okay, let's throw $500 at this and let's see what the result is, what the outcome is. Even our best channels today, and then I'll let you chime in, we still track the effectiveness of, and there's certain channels in recent history where we're like, whoa, that effectiveness actually, we're now seeing a downward slope in terms of how effective that channel is. And we need to become innovative again and continue to find those channels that give us that growth number that we're really looking to achieve.
Yeah, I think that is so good to talk about there as well. I also want to talk about, something that you have been consistent with, and that is like content creation on like LinkedIn. I want to talk about what's the importance of having, I don't want to say like a founder-led content strategy, because that's definitely not like what it is, but like what's the importance of founders actually posting on LinkedIn consistently?
Yeah, I probably don't have a super fulfilling answer for you, but sometimes this job can be so soul sucking. And for me, like, Honestly, like, work's great. Work passes the time. Like, to me, like, I value people and connections and community. And I think honestly, posting on LinkedIn and like I've formed such good, genuine connections with other founders and other people on LinkedIn. And I feel like it's just been an outlet for me to sort of just like talk about what I'm doing, meet other people who are doing cool stuff. It really is my social media of choice. And I feel like half of my friends are just like my LinkedIn friends.
Oh, I love that. Honestly,
Don't
there's
quote me on that.
yeah. There are like phenomenal people on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn people had the like highest integrity of some other social media platforms. I don't want to get into that. I've been burned by Twitter people, but I don't want to get into that. Let's get actionable with advice here for people. Let's continue down that trend here. With your experience, I mean, you've done a lot. You started up in Twitter. I take that back now. I apologize. But you've also done Forage and now PodPitch. I mean, with your experience, what would you say is the most underrated skill for first time entrepreneurs?
I think the most underrated skill for first time entrepreneurs is collecting money. It comes back to it again. Like, can you get somebody to give you money and then can you get a second person to give you money for the same thing? It sounds dumb and it sounds capitalistic. And I started, right? My soul was in it, my grit was in it, but you need both. You need that. And at the end of the day, like you need to make money and the business model needs to work.
So good. Another question here is like for aspiring entrepreneurs, especially like those non-technical co-founders, raising my hand here, raising both hands there. What's your advice for capitalizing on opportunities in AI?
Oh, we look at new opportunities every single day for building something really similar to what we've built, but for other industries and other functions and motions. And there's just never been an opportunity to be less technical, but more dangerous with tech right now. I think my big kind of thought about that in particular is what makes people really dangerous with AI that not anybody can just immediately copy is data. Like how you can pair data with AI is your golden ticket. And go and understand like how could you collect first party data? How can you create first party data, even using AI to help solve a real pain point or a real job for someone, for anyone? I've never worked in the PR industry, but that's who we serve now.
Yeah. I think what I love about your story too, and like what I would advise other people as well is like some people are like I can do that. Like I'm kind of a jack of all trades here. But a great way to like identify opportunities, just like what's a pain point that I have? How can I go solve that? What are AI tools out there to like really go solve it? For you, I mean, in particular, it was like finding podcasts to like be on. That's like the origin story of PodPitch. So if people are struggling to think of those opportunities, I think it's a great way to do it is just see what is my pain point? How can I capitalize on that?
Yeah. Have you heard of James Altrich?
I don't think so.
He made this concept infamous. He started like 8 businesses. 4 of them he sold like over 10 million. 4 of them failed. But his whole thing was like he wrote down 10 ideas every single day. And it just like got his brain into like forcing the idea of just having to write down ideas and look for opportunity, which I really liked.
I think that is such a great way to do it. I was literally talking to someone about this about 5 hours ago. Take a deep breath. When you think about entrepreneurship, look all around you right now. This podcast microphone in front of me, the cables here, this sticky note, this computer, this candle, all that was started by entrepreneurs. So when you're going out in your day to day, just like look for those opportunities. There's a fence that's broken, fix the fence, go fix parking lots, do whatever you need to do. Before we move to our fan blitz questions here, I love this question here. You've built multiple ventures. How do you identify which business ideas are worth pursuing and which to leave behind?
I think about pain point versus vitamin. That's one index arena. I will never build a vitamin ever again. I won't. I'm too traumatized.
Yeah.
Pain point versus vitamin. And then I personally am very bullish, and you hear this advice, but on niches, like don't go and try and solve cancer. There are a million other people doing that with way more funding and way more knowledge than you. And it could be you. Maybe that is you. But I think, especially if you're trying to just really get into entrepreneurship, like there are these tiny little niches where if you served 300 customers every single year, you could make $1 million, like 300. Like we're not talking hundreds of thousands of people. We're talking 300 people that have the same problem and have a really specific, painful issue. And so I think sometimes people who are aspiring entrepreneurs can get lost in this fact of like thousands and thousands of people, when in reality, like if you solve a problem for 1,000 people, that's a really awesome business.
So good. Parker, you have given us great tidbits throughout this whole episode, so I'm so thankful for that. But we're going to move to our fan blitz questions, and these are 5 questions submitted from our community. Listeners, if you want to join in on world-class entrepreneurs, go to www.youtube.com/upflip and submit your questions there. Parker, ready for our last 5 here?
Hit me.
Let's do it. Number 1, what's the biggest single driver of your business growth right now?
Customer acquisition. How do I answer that?
Customer acquisitions. That's a good way to put it. Number two, if you could only keep one marketing channel, which would it be and why?
Newsletter advertising. And it's just lowest CAC.
Number three, what's the hardest part of running your business that no one warned you about?
I think the miscellaneous administrative work and like the work where it doesn't help the business move forward and it's painful and it's just like you have to do it. I hate that stuff and it's really hard to prioritize.
I agree with that. Number four, this is a good question. What's one feature or change that made the biggest impact on your product success?
We took a risk in going to a place and building something that a lot of early potential customers said would like never work. But the first person who said that they'd give us money said they'd give us money if we built that. And that's how we found that function. So shout out Jordan Pallinson, like my beautiful, lovely customer and hero and friend.
I love it. All right, last fan blitz question for you. If you had to double your revenue in 30 days, what's the first move you'd make?
Probably upselling existing customers. We think there's a lot of room on the table and we are building some really interesting new products and they're really close to launching. So,
oh God, that's a phenomenal answer. Well, I feel like I could launch a business from this whole podcast. So Parker, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Just last question for you. If someone's like, you know what, I need to check out PodPitch. I need to check out Parker. Where can people connect with PodPitch? And then where can they connect with you?
PodPitch.com. You can come, you can get a demo, you can see the product. I still give quite a few demos myself, so maybe we'll meet there or, drop me a line on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn. I think I respond to like every single LinkedIn DM I get, unless it's like a super hard pitch, and I don't. But yeah, I love chatting and I love meeting people. I'm in Brooklyn, I'm in New York, so I'm more than happy to kick it if folks are local.
Everyone, that was an amazing episode. 3 quick takeaways for you. Number one, I love the sales question of what would make you pay for this right now. Parker implemented that and you saw his conversion rate skyrocket. So if you're in a sales call, ask that question. I thought that was really, really good. Number two, AI and data for non-technical is an amazing opportunity. Look for AI, look for data, look how you can combine those and you have a product. Number three, sell a pain pill, not a vitamin. I loved that tidbit from Parker. Look for ways where people have pains, how can you prescribe that pain instead of prescribing them a vitamin. Phenomenal episode with Parker. Hey guys, if you want to learn more about PodPitch, that link will be down below. In the meantime, we will see you next week. Parker, you're the best. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Ryan.